Once upon a time, in Rutland, Vermont, there was and still is a magical time of the year for young and old alike, but especially the young. Traditionally, it is a celebration of the birth of Jesus, but to a child gazing upon the nativity set, it also meant the arrival of Santa Claus with a shiny new fire truck or a doll if you had been a really good boy or girl all year. Growing up in Rutland in the early 1950s, Christmas was an unforgettable and thrilling time. Downtown Rutland became a wonderland adorned by sparkly garland and colored bulbs, hung with care across Merchants Row, West Street, and Center Street. And don't forget Santa, whose sleigh and reindeer hung from the county bank over to Woolworths. Who can forget the smell of hot chocolate and Christmas cookies in the air, the Christmas tree lighting in Depot Park, the stores decorated from front to back, the sound of the hustle and bustle of shoppers, the singing of carols, and the bell ringers of the Salvation Army, all music to my ears. Had a gentle snowfall illuminated by streetlights, and it was an experience so heartwarming that words almost can't describe it. Speaking of which, there is a gentle snowfall arriving now. So join us as we take you back to Twas a Christmas in Rutland. Shangri-La's Pharmacy at the corner of Center and Whale Street always had their store decorated for Christmas. Shangri-La's were noted for their camera department, so part of the display does show quite a bit of Kodak equipment, as I remember. There are some wonderful photos of it taken by Warren Dexter that shows the inside and outside of the store, and it gives you a feel of Christmas 1947 in downtown Rutland. Other decorations that everybody fondly remembers are the garlands with the colored lights that were strung across the streets, Merchants Row, Center Street, and West Street. I don't think they were on State Street. Now, it's not to say that Rutland wasn't decorated before 1940 when these decorations were first put up. We have pictures probably from 1936 of downtown, a little grainy, but they do show Merchants Row decorated. These lights were erected by the Chamber of Commerce and I believe Central Vermont, and there's a great photo of them being erected, taken on Merchants Row looking south towards the fire station. Now the gentlemen erecting the garland are using a ladder that I know OSHA would frown upon today. It's too tall, it's unsteady, but it worked. But anyways, those are the ones we most remember. And I believe they were placed downtown up until at least 1972, as I can remember. And we have some great color photos of them from the 1960s, taken by George Hewitt's dad. Santa Claus decoration with his sleigh and reindeer that was strung across Merchants Row from the county bank to Woolworths first appeared, I believe, in 1955. Most people that remember downtown Rutland remember that. The first thing they bring up is that decoration. I think it was there until at least 1962, but I'm not sure. But Aldo Marusi from the Rutland Herald captured in a photo that decoration in a scene that could be placed in It's a Wonderful Life or A Christmas Story. It shows the snow falling, it's at night, there's lights glistening off cars that are parked. You can almost look inside Woolworths, and I just want to jump into that picture and start hollering, "Hello, Bedford Falls." The There's just something about it. I mean, that is one of the greatest Christmas pictures I think that Aldo or the Herald ever published. Walking through downtown Rutland at Christmas time, there was music that was amplified, I'm not sure from where, but you could hear Christmas carols. And if it was snowing, I always thought of the song Silver Bells. It was sung by Bob Hope. It was introduced in the movie The Lemon Drop Kid in 1951. So by 1955 and 1956, it had become a standard. And if you ever watch the movie, he's dressed as Santa Claus, and Marilyn Maxwell is singing with him. They're walking down the street. It's so nostalgic. It's so old-fashioned. But there's a pan out from them, and it shows everybody on the street singing with them. And the garland over their head looks like downtown Rutland. So every time I hear that song, and I subject my family to it every year because we have to see part of the movie where that's sung, it reminds me of Rutland. And there's also a Saturday Evening Post cover, I think it was from 1946 or 7, that I don't know where the town is, it's out west somewhere, but it does look like downtown Rutland, and everybody that sees it tends to agree that the garland looks the same. Another Christmas memory, of course, is Gene Autry singing Here Comes Santa Claus. Which he wrote. He actually wrote that song for the Santa Claus Lane Parade in California in 1949, I believe. And he also sang Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That I'm not sure if he wrote, but those two songs for a kid to hear at Christmas sung by Gene Autry were the epitome. Another familiar sound in downtown Rutland at Christmas was the Salvation Army bell ringers. Now, the one I always remember was in front of Woolworths. I can't tell you who it was, but many different people volunteered. There were the Salvation Army soldiers themselves in uniform. And usually the mayor of Rutland got involved with the bell ringers, and the Herald was usually there to take a picture. Whether it was Mayor Healy, Daly, or Godnick, it was all good publicity. It was for a good cause, and I'm sure they donated a little bit themselves. In downtown Rutland at the Economy Store, Santa Claus would make an appearance on the 4th floor in the toy department. And the Economy would have an ad in advertising that he would be there. And one of the ads, I think, mentions he even has a new suit. But to a 5-year-old kid, you really didn't notice that. So when you got there, like in A Christmas Story, he was very imposing, he was loud, he was friendly, but he was scary. And I remember sitting on his lap, telling him what I wanted for Christmas, and I think I got a lollipop and a comic book, and I left. However, in 1952 on Christmas Eve, my parents decided that Santa Claus would pay a visit. Well, Santa Claus was actually my Uncle Tom O'Rourke, but I didn't know that at the time. So I was informed that he would be arriving, and I was a little nervous. And there's a photo of me sitting on the floor reading a comic book of Bugs Bunny Christmas Funnies. And I think Santa arrived about 9 o'clock, as I remember. Doorbell rang. My mother and father were there, my grandmother O'Rourke, Uncle Charlie, my cousin Tom Rooney. So the door opened and came Santa Claus with his bag over his shoulder. And the only odd thing was he had a handkerchief on his face. And he gave a ho 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 and said he had a cold, but I found out later that his beard had broken, and he was using the handkerchief to keep the beard on. Well, let me tell you, he put the sack down, and I had cookies and milk for him. And the first thing he threw at me was, "Have you said shut up to your parents?" And the answer was yes, but I didn't know what to say, so there's a picture of me looking at my grandmother for moral support. And she said, "Just tell him yes," and I told him yes, and he told me to be a good boy, and I said I would. So the sack of toys went down, Santa turned with a ho ho ho, and left. Well, at that point, I guess I was suspicious, so I looked out the window to watch him. And what happened was, down on our driveway, there was another sack of toys in a bag, laundry sack. And he marched next door to Capello's at 24 Burnham Avenue and rang the doorbell. Well, let me tell you, I was a true believer at that point for at least the next 2 or 3 years in Santa Claus. And that is my vivid Christmas Eve memory from 1952. Most of the downtown stores had a toy department, and at Christmas time, the department was bulging with extra toys and gifts. Probably the biggest one was Wilson Sports on Center Street. They had a special catalog they put out. I remember the 1955 one. I think it was called the Toy Guidance Catalog, but it was toys basically that you should buy for your children. Some were educational, most were fun, some were TV related. Also, in the old Kai's building on Evelyn Street, I think in 54, 55, maybe 56, there was something called Toy Town. And it was only open during the holidays. But to me, that was almost like walking into Macy's in New York. It was huge. And I've heard rumors that actually Wilson Sports was behind it. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that was the largest toy display I ever saw. Also, the five and dime stores, Woolworth, Kresge's, Fishman's, and Newberry's until 1955, always had a toy department anyways, but even then it became bigger at Christmas. And also, I got to give honorable mention to Edison Auto Supply up on Merchants Row. Bert Edison and his wife. At Christmas time, they would have a Tonka toy display in their window that was to die for. I mean, all these Tonka construction trucks, fire trucks, you name it. But he really went all out, and I think a lot of people always remember that. The official start of the Christmas season, at least in Rutland, was on Thanksgiving Day. On television, we had the Macy's Parade, which lasted usually from 9 to 12, after which Thanksgiving dinner was served, at least at our house. But at the end of the Macy's Parade was Santa Claus on his sleigh, waving at all the kids. And that was the official start of Christmas season. It didn't start in September. It didn't start in October. It started on Thanksgiving Day. And then for the next 3 or 4 weeks, whatever the date may be, there was a lot of hustle and bustle, a lot of shopping, decorations being put up. But it was traditional. That's when it started in those days. Another tradition was buying your Christmas tree. My dad used to stop at the house at the corner of State and Pine, I think it was Segali's, and bought his tree there for many years. After his stroke, for some reason, I was down on Route 103 across from the airport. A gentleman down there, I don't know how I got tangled up with him, but I bought a tree down there for 3 or 4 years. It was always roughly a week before Christmas that the tree was put up. Some people put the tree up on Christmas Eve, and I never understood that. Why have a tree up Christmas Eve, and do you take it down Christmas Day or what? Our tree stayed up till New Year's, so the tradition was roughly a week before Christmas and a week after Christmas. And the stores seem to be in such a rush to promote holidays nowadays that they'll throw a Thanksgiving turkey at you, stuffed with Halloween candy, wrapped in Christmas paper, with fireworks included. Another Christmas tradition in Rutland was the lighting of the downtown tree in Depot Park. The earliest evidence of a tree being there goes back to 1934, and the Herald used to publish pictures every year. The lighting drew a large crowd. Santa sometimes was the one who lit the tree. We do have a picture of Sam Stoll lighting at one time in 1951. But Santa was usually the man on the switch. Our picture of Santa coming down from the Mead Building in 1943 on the fire department aerial ladder indicates maybe he went over to the park at that time, yet it was daylight, so I'm sure he did not light the tree at that time. But I'd say from 1950 on up into the 70s, 80s, even today Santa arrives on a city fire truck, usually the Friday night after Thanksgiving, to traditionally light the downtown Christmas tree. It's a very nice way to start the holiday season, to be downtown with friends and family, friends and neighbors, to have some hot chocolate and watch Santa light the tree. Most children wrote letters to Santa, and obviously these letters ended up at the post office, probably in the dead letter office, unfortunately. But if you watched Miracle on 34th Street, you kind of had a good idea of how many letters were written and where they ended up going at the end of that movie. Another Christmas tradition was Christmas cards. My mom had a special book where she kept a list of who she sent them to and who she got them from. During the Depression in 1932-33, the federal government bought Memorial Hall on West Street, tore it down, and built a magnificent new federal building / post office, which I'm sure contributed to the delivery of Christmas cards and Santa letters. And I always think of their motto, neither rain nor sleet nor snow nor gloom of night shall keep them from their appointed rounds. And at Christmas, especially with all the snowstorms, they really earn their money. Another Christmas memory to me is magazine ads. It seems like probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks before Christmas, the Post, Life, Look, whatever, Collier's would have beautiful Christmas ads of Santa Claus selling something, candy, cigarettes, you name it. I don't know if Santa smoked or not, but anyways, that's what I remember. But I also remember comic book covers. Every comic book seemed to have a Christmas cover. And whether it was Batman or Superman or Little Lulu, somebody, there was always a Christmas cover. And a special one I remember is Roy Rogers decorating a Christmas tree, and he's got a box of bulbs that he's hanging from the branches. And I still have a box of those. I think they're called Shiny Bright Lights. And it's a special box that I save and put out every year. To me, it's like the holy grail of Christmas. There was also TV Guide Christmas covers. I guess almost every magazine must have had some kind of a Christmas cover related ad or something. I'm not sure if all schools had Christmas parties, but Immaculate Heart really didn't that I remember. The special thing there was you got out early on whatever your dismissal day was before the vacation. We were herded down to the gymnasium, and Father Desautel's, later Monsignor Desautel's, would come out on the stage. And it was almost like the scene in Bells of St. Mary's where Bing Crosby said, "It's a holiday, school is dismissed." Well, that's what Father would do. And everybody would cheer, and, you know, we'd go home about 10 o'clock. And the only thing that I do remember is Immaculate Heart having a Christmas party in the 6th grade, and that was Sister Mary Agathine was her name. And what she did was the day that we got back, I think it was January 2nd, she announced that on January 3rd we could bring in our favorite Christmas gift and spend the afternoon with the other kids in the class, playing with them, looking at them, whatever. I mean, we were in the 6th grade, but I just always remember that nostalgically because it was so out of line with the rest of the classes that I was in. Downtown businesses and businesses in general always had Christmas parties, it seems, in the 40s and 50s and maybe into the 60s. And the Herald covered them extensively. Of course, Aldo Marusi probably got a free dinner, but he got many pictures of groups of people celebrating Christmas. Another thing I remember too is 1951 I came across these photos where a fraternal organization, and I can't think of the name of it, sponsored a Christmas show at the Paramount for children. There's pictures of it. They also brought the children to the club rooms after for a party. Speaking of movies, another Christmas memory is 1960. We had finished Christmas Eve dinner, and I went in to watch television, channel WAST, had a 6 o'clock movie on, and they were showing a movie called Miracle in the Desert. Well, it was 1936, and what I found out later that the original title was Three Godfathers, but they had changed the title because a 1948 movie with John Wayne, which was a remake, had the same title, so they changed the title of the 36 version. So, I'm sitting down watching this movie, and the plot is three outlaws come into town to rob the bank on Christmas Day because everybody will be at church. It's a Western, by the way. So they're casing the town the night before, and they end up at a church social. And one of the stars is Louis Stone, who played Andy Hardy's father in the Andy Hardy series. And Louis Stone is at the social with this woman. And as he's talking, she says, "You sound like an Easterner." And he says, "I am. I'm from Rutland, Vermont." And when I heard that, I almost fell off the couch. And I ran out to my parents and was telling them about this thing I just heard. And of course, they thought I was cracking up. And apparently, they had never seen the movie. But to me, that's a very special Christmas memory to hear Rutland, Vermont mentioned on Christmas Eve. After they rob the bank, the three outlaws ride into the desert and come upon a wagon. And in the wagon is a lady giving birth. Now, mind you, it's Christmas Day, so we have the three wise men analogy here. And basically, the woman's husband has died trying to find water. The lady dies after giving birth, but makes the outlaws promise they'll raise her baby or look out for her baby. And that's the whole plot of the movie, is they fight among themselves. I won't reveal the ending, but it's in either version, it's a very good ending, and it's a nice, nostalgic Christmas movie. This is going to sound like one out of It's a Wonderful Life or Going My Way or something, but on Christmas Day 1955, the doorbell rang, and it was police officer Danny Brown with a package that had come from our relatives up in Waterbury, Vermont, and they weren't patients, they actually lived there. And Vermont Transit was running on Christmas Day. Make a long story short, they forgot to send our Christmas present. They sent it down on the bus. I don't know how Danny Brown got involved, but he delivered the present to our house. And we have two great photos of Danny standing by our front door, posing. And then he's talking to my grandmother, Mrs. O'Rourke, who he grew up knowing. So here's my grandmother at probably 71 or 2, and poor Danny at, 56 maybe. I'm not sure. I think my grandmother was older. But the sad part is Danny only lived about 4 more months. I think he died in the spring of 56. But it's always a nice Christmas memory that Danny Brown came up with that package for our family. When I was growing up, every family had a milkman, a bread man, My grandmother had an Eggman down in Forest Street. The Iceman came around with blocks of ice. But in 1975, the Seward Milkman left a note for his customers saying that he wanted to spend Christmas Day and New Year's Day with his family. So he would be delivering on December 24th and 31st. And in that note, he mentioned the products that he would have that the families might want for those holidays: eggnog, fruitcakes, etc. And it was very nostalgic in 1975 to see such a note. Another Christmas memory, I can remember being down at the railroad station awaiting the arrival of my uncles and cousin on that steaming and smoking iron horse, chugging into the station pulling passenger cars full of happy travelers glad to be home to Rutland for the holidays. In 1970 and 1971, the Chamber of Commerce decided to buy a large Santa Claus from another chamber in New York State. They had it trucked over, and it was assembled and erected in the downtown plaza. Santa sat upon a large chimney, I believe. I would say he was probably 50 to 60 feet tall. He was waving at everybody, and you could see him good from Center Street especially, but as you went by in Merchants Row. And he was there in 1970 and 1971. 71 I remember especially because the fire department got involved in helping erect him. Problem was, he was a scary Santa. Many kids remember him and are fearful as they tell you the story of driving by him with their parents. And I don't know what it was about him, but he did have some kind of a look about him that kids always remember negatively. We have some great photos of this Santa from the Herald, and especially thanks to George Hewitt's dad, we have some actual video. Another important thing in downtown Rutland was the arrival of Santa Claus. In 1943, there's a famous photo of Santa coming down the Rutland Fire Department aerial ladder truck from the top of the Mead Building. Now, I'm not sure if his sleigh landed there or what, but there was a large crowd of children and adults waiting for him, and I'm sure he had many presents to give out to them. Over the years, Santa has arrived on various fire trucks, helicopters, especially in 1967 at the plaza in downtown. At the Great Rutland Mall in 1982, he arrived on a horse and wagon. And in 1984, his sleigh even landed on the parking deck in downtown Rutland. In 1960, there was a Santa parade, and it was quite elaborate. There were many floats in it. The Rutland High Band, the MSJ Band, among others. A large crowd gathered. The only odd thing was it was noontime, I believe, according to the clock on the Killington Bank. So Santa couldn't very well light the Christmas tree at that time. But there's great photos of him on the Ladder 1, 1957 Maxim, waving at the crowd. Other photos of floats going down Merchants Row. Very well attended parade. And speaking of Santa, the downtown Santa had to be Al Price. I believe Al was hired by the Chamber of Commerce as the downtown Santa for at least 10 or 12 years, but he was the epitome of what Santa Claus should look like. He had his own beard, no fake beard, beautiful suit, the kindest face. He had kind eyes, a pleasant smile, and he made the children just feel at ease. There was no fear of sitting on Santa's lap or Santa's gruff voice, because Al was just everything Santa Claus should be to a child. He's a great downtown Rutland memory that I'm sure many people remember. Right after Christmas, at least in 1955, and at least for a few more years after that, there was the Winter Carnival Parade. It went down Merchants Row. Usually a lot of cars with pretty girls riding in it, candidates for the Queen, floats, and it was to promote skiing up at Pico, as I remember. But it was a big downtown event. Joan Looker was the Queen one time, and she appeared on the Today program with Dave Garroway and kind of put Rutland on the map there, as Carleen Johnson did earlier when she was Miss USA. But there's one photo especially of the 1955 parade, taken after the parade was over. And it was people downtown just lingering around, walking around. They all seemed to be looking up at something, which I never could find out what it was. But in that photo, if you zoom in on it, there's two little boys. And it looks like Ralphie and his brother from A Christmas Story. And you've got to see it, and I'm sure you will, because Ben will take care of it. And it's just the neatest thing to see, because it's a throwback. I mean, it's not them, obviously, but it sure looks like them. To give a tip of the hat to my cousin, Tom Rooney, Rutland High School class of 1947, who was always a good sport and went above and beyond to play Santa Claus in 1957 for the Immaculate Heart of Mary Cub Scout troop. At 10, we were beyond Santa, but it was still a lot of fun. And he got his photo taken by Aldo Marusi, which appeared in the Rutland Herald, as he was getting a hug from Daisy Rhine, Dr. Rhine's wife and mother of Rebel and Tommy. Tom Rooney, who is still going strong at 90 and is as sharp as a tack with his Rutland memories, is responsible for most of the family color photos seen in this production. Christmas in 1954 was special because it was my grandmother's last Christmas at 77 Forest Street, where she had lived for 40 years. So the family gathered down there for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We had Mass at St. Peter's. There's a nice picture of my family taken on the front lawn, heading to church. My one memory of being in church that day was the fire whistle blew. And again, it was another fire on Christmas Day. It occurred on Temple Street. And my father did not have to leave church. I guess it was considered a holiday for him. But the firemen knocked it down very quickly. And we came home to Christmas dinner at my grandmother's. We were gathered around the dining room table with the largest turkey I've ever seen. Another Christmas memory at my grandmother's was bubble lights. I'd never seen bubble lights before. And at that last Christmas, my family broke out her old decorations and decorated the tree. And I first saw bubble lights, and I was really impressed with them. And I still have that same string of bubble lights, but I don't dare hook them up for fear of causing a fire. But I still have them as a nostalgic memory of that time on Forest Street. Another Forest Street was oyster soup. And apparently, way back in the 40s, my grandmother would make this at midnight Christmas Eve, and after midnight mass, people would come back and gather at her house, must be 2 in the morning, and have oyster soup. As a result of that memory, I was telling my late brother-in-law, Joe Ladabush, about it. So he made oyster soup for me each Christmas Eve for the last 10 years at least, and it's a memory I'll always have of Joe and my grandmother and Christmas Eve. Joey Garfano, R.I.P., who was head of the Rutland, Vermont group, told me about another Italian tradition called the Feast of the Five Fishes. And I never really found out what the five fishes were, but that was another Italian tradition of Christmas time in Rutland. Great pictures, just a nice memory of 77 Forest Street in 1954. Christmas Day, 1955, and the celebration is ending at 22 Burnham Avenue. As I gaze at yet another beautiful Rutland sunset, with the light glistening off the snow, I think of the many eras of our community. Rutland, with just its historic buildings and no people, is just a place. Without its families, neighbors, friends, and hometown folks looking out for each other, it would be missing what makes it special. It is the people in our lives that make and shape our history, who make the memories and pass on the stories that we will pass on to the next generation. Of all the wonderful Christmas gifts anyone could receive, the greatest ones are those memories of the special people and places in our lives. Some of the locations may be torn down, and some of those special people may have passed on. But as long as you remember, you will always have a comforting path to follow that will bring you back to those special places and people anytime you wish. So think back to those good memories. Close your eyes and make a wish. And you can go home again. You have enjoyed our latest trip back in time, and no matter what holiday you and yours celebrate, with warmth, love, and good cheer, we wish you a very happy holiday season. And a Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.